Have you ever wondered why? Throughout human history, powerful rulers have continuously risen up, convinced of their own invincibility, only to vanish into the dust of time. In 586 BCE, King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon stood triumphant over Jerusalem, believing he had conquered God's people forever. Yet within 5 decades, his mighty Babylonian empire crumbled to dust. What secret wisdom explains this recurring pattern of human power challenging divine authority? The answer lies in one of history's most provocative poems, Psalm 2. Written approximately 3,000 years ago, this ancient royal psalm reveals a profound truth that still echoes across our modern landscape. Earthly powers may rage against heaven's authority, but their rebellion ultimately proves futile. Today, we're diving into a fascinating ancient text that has shaped Western civilization far more than most people realize. Psalm 2 isn't just religious literature. It's a geopolitical commentary, a royal proclamation, and a messianic prophecy all woven into 12 powerful verses. I want you to imagine yourself in ancient Jerusalem around 1000 BCE. The Davidic kingdom is establishing itself as a regional power. Surrounding nations plot rebellion against this emerging threat. In this volatile context, a Hebrew poet pens words that would reverberate through millennia, words that would later be quoted by early Christians, medieval kings, and even modern political theorists. Let's explore this remarkable text together. Psalm 2 opens with a startling question. Why do the nations rage and the peoples plot in vain? The Hebrew word translated as rage, ragash, carries the connotation of restless, agitated assembly. The psalm portrays world rulers gathering together, conspiring against divine authority. The psalmist continues, "The kings of the earth set themselves, and the rulers take counsel together against the Lord and against his anointed, saying, Let us burst their bonds apart and cast away their cords from us." This imagery would have resonated powerfully with ancient Near Eastern audiences familiar with vassal treaties. In the second millennium BCE, Hittite and Egyptian suzerains would bind subject kingdoms with covenant agreements. These international treaties established the obligations of vassal states toward their overlords. The metaphor of bonds and cords directly references these ancient diplomatic arrangements. Consider the historical context. During the United Monarchy period of Israel, approximately 1050 to 930 BCE, neighboring peoples like the Philistines, Moabites, Edomites, and Ammonites frequently rebelled against Israelite rule. Archaeological evidence from sites like Tel Dan and extra-biblical sources like the Mesha Stele confirm these power struggles. The Psalm's language of rebellion precisely mirrors the political realities of this tumultuous era. But the Psalm takes a dramatic turn in verse 4. "He who sits in the heavens laughs. The Lord holds them in derision." This powerful anthropomorphism depicts God's response to human rebellion not as anger, but as dismissive laughter. The cosmic sovereign views these earthly machinations as ultimately futile. The Hebrew verb sachak, used here, denotes not gentle amusement, but mocking, scornful laughter. It's the laughter of one who recognizes the absurd disparity between the rebels' limited perspective and the actual reality of power. Archaeological discoveries at sites like Nineveh have unearthed Assyrian palace reliefs depicting conquered rulers in chains, prostrating before their conqueror. These visual representations of ancient power dynamics help us understand the stark imagery of Psalm 2. The psalm presents a cosmic version of this familiar scene, with rebellious rulers ultimately brought low before divine authority. This theme continues in verse 5. "Then he will speak to them in his wrath and terrify them in his fury, saying, As for me, I have set my king on Zion, my holy hill." The divine response to human rebellion is the installation of God's chosen ruler on Zion, the Jerusalem Temple Mount. Excavations at Jerusalem's City of David reveal that this area held tremendous symbolic significance. Originally a Jebusite stronghold captured by David around 1000 BCE, this location became the political and religious center of ancient Israel. By the time of Solomon's temple construction, circa 966 to 959 BCE, Zion had developed into a powerful symbol of divine presence and royal legitimacy. Verses 7 to 9 shift to the voice of this divinely appointed king. I will tell of the decree. The Lord said to me, "You are my son. Today I have begotten you. Ask of me, and I will make the nations your heritage, and the ends of the earth your possession. You shall break them with a rod of iron, and dash them in pieces like a potter's vessel." This language directly parallels ancient Near Eastern royal adoption ceremonies. When a new king ascended the throne in Egypt or Mesopotamia, he was often declared to be the son of the deity. Texts from Ugarit and Egypt confirm this pattern of divine sonship as a legitimizing claim for royal authority. The metaphor of breaking nations with an iron rod draws on imagery from the Late Bronze Age, 1550 to 1200 BCE. Iron was a newly emerging, superior technology that symbolized overwhelming military advantage. Clay vessels, by contrast, represented fragility. This stark contrast between iron and clay powerfully communicates the futility of resistance against divine authority. Fascinatingly, this passage became one of the most influential texts for early Christian theology. In the 1st century CE, followers of Jesus identified him as this promised messianic king. Acts 4 verses 25 to 26 directly quotes Psalm 2 when describing opposition to the early Christian movement. Revelation 19 verse 15 applies the iron rod imagery to Christ's eschatological rule. This interpretive trajectory wasn't merely spiritual. Throughout European history, Christian monarchs from Charlemagne to Queen Victoria invoked Psalm 2 to legitimize their rule as divinely appointed. The concept of divine right of kings that dominated Western political theory for centuries draws heavily from this psalm's royal theology. The final verses offer a remarkable conclusion. Now therefore, O kings, be wise, be warned, O rulers of the earth. Serve the Lord with fear and rejoice with trembling. Kiss the Son, lest he be angry, and you perish in the way, for his wrath is quickly kindled. Blessed are all who take refuge in him. The command to kiss the Son references ancient Near Eastern practices of vassalage. Assyrian reliefs from the palace of Shalmaneser III at Nimrud, circa 850 BCE, depict subject kings kissing the feet of their overlord as a sign of submission. The psalm adapts this political imagery to spiritual purposes, suggesting that true wisdom for rulers lies in acknowledging divine sovereignty. This ancient text offers extraordinary psychological insight. It recognizes the human tendency toward autonomy and rebellion against higher authority. The Hebrew phrase translated, "take counsel together," Isaiah, in verse 2 suggests careful, deliberate planning. This is not impulsive resistance, but calculated rejection. Throughout history, we've witnessed this pattern repeatedly. In 538 BCE, Cyrus the Great conquered seemingly invincible Babylon. Alexander's vast empire fractured immediately after his death in 323 BCE. Rome's mighty legions couldn't prevent its eventual collapse. Napoleon's ambitions ended at Waterloo in 1815. The 1,000-year Third Reich lasted barely 12 years. Psalm 2 offers a perspective that transcends political analysis. It suggests that human authority, which sets itself against moral and divine principles, contains within itself the seeds of its own destruction. The psalmist recognized this pattern 3 millennia ago, and history has repeatedly confirmed this insight. But this ancient text isn't merely interested in condemning rebellion. Its final verse offers a remarkable alternative. Blessed are all who take refuge in him. The Hebrew word for blessed, denotes a state of profound well-being and happiness. The psalm culminates not with threats, but with a promise of security for those who align themselves with divine purposes. Archaeological excavations at sites like Qumran reveal how this psalm was interpreted around the time of Jesus. The Dead Sea Scrolls, dating from the 3rd century BCE to the 1st century CE, contain multiple references to Psalm 2, particularly in messianic contexts. Fragment 4Q174, known as Florilegium, explicitly interprets the Anointed One of Psalm 2 as the future Davidic Messiah. This messianic interpretation gained tremendous significance in the turbulent period of Roman occupation. After Pompey's conquest of Jerusalem in 63 BCE, Jewish hopes for liberation often centered on the promised Davidic king who would overthrow foreign oppressors. The Psalms of Solomon, composed shortly after this Roman conquest, explicitly draw on Psalm 2's imagery when describing the expected Messiah. By the 1st century CE, this interpretive framework provided the backdrop for early Christian proclamations about Jesus. When Peter and John were arrested in Acts 4, the early Christian community quoted Psalm 2 to understand their persecution within a larger divine narrative. The Apostle Paul, speaking in Antioch of Pisidia, Acts 13 verse 33, cited Psalm 2 verse 7 as being fulfilled in Christ's resurrection. Early Christian liturgy and hymnody frequently incorporated this psalm. By the 2nd century CE, writers like Justin Martyr and Irenaeus regularly cited Psalm 2 in apologetic contexts. Its influence extended into medieval church music, Renaissance art, and Reformation theology. Mozart's motet Splendidity Deus and Handel's Messiah both incorporate portions of Psalm 2, demonstrating its enduring artistic impact. Johann Sebastian Bach's cantata Worum Taben die Heiden, BWV 14, composed in 1735, takes its title and theme directly from the opening line of this psalm. Visual artists throughout history have found inspiration in this text as well. Michelangelo's Sistine Chapel fresco of Christ's return draws on imagery from Psalm 2 and Revelation. Renaissance painters like Raphael incorporated similar themes in their depictions of divine judgment. But what makes this ancient poem so persistently relevant? How does a text from the ancient Near East continue to resonate across such diverse cultural contexts? I believe the answer lies in its profound psychological and political insight. Psalm 2 addresses a fundamental human tension, our desire for autonomy versus our need for moral governance. It speaks to the recurring pattern of human institutions that become corrupted by power and ultimately collapse under their own moral contradictions. Consider how this ancient wisdom applies to contemporary contexts. Modern political systems still grapple with the proper limits of authority. International relations still feature powerful nations asserting autonomy, while smaller states seek protection under larger frameworks of governance. The Psalm's warning against hubris remains profoundly relevant. History repeatedly demonstrates that leaders who consider themselves accountable to no higher moral authority frequently overreach and ultimately fail. From Richard Nixon's declaration, "When the president does it, that means it is not illegal," to more recent examples of authoritarian overreach, we continue to witness the pattern described in this ancient text. Yet Psalm 2 doesn't leave us with cynicism about human governance. Its final verse offers an alternative vision, one where security comes not through autonomous power, but through right relationship with divine principles. This invitation to take refuge suggests that true security comes not through domination, but through alignment with lasting moral principles. Modern psychological research on human flourishing affirms this ancient wisdom. Studies consistently show that power in isolation corrupts, while power balanced by accountability leads to more sustainable outcomes. The Psalm's emphasis on rulers being wise, and instructed speaks to the importance of moral formation for those in authority. Let's look more deeply at the literary structure of this remarkable poem. Scholars have noted that Psalm 2 follows a carefully crafted four-part structure. Verses 1 to 3 describe the rebellion of earthly rulers. Verses 4 to 6 reveal God's response of derision and decree. Verses 7 to 9 present the divine king's declaration of authority. Verses 10 to 12 offer a final exhortation to worldly leaders. This balanced structure reinforces the psalm's central message. Human rebellion is countered by divine establishment of authority, which should lead to wise submission rather than futile resistance. The linguistic features deserve attention as well. The Hebrew employs a technique called inclusio, where similar themes frame the beginning and end. The blessed are of the final verse creates a striking contrast with the vain, Rick, plotting mentioned in the opening. This suggests that true happiness lies not in rebellion, but in proper alignment with divine authority. The geopolitical realities that shape this text help us appreciate its original impact. The ancient Near East was characterized by constant power struggles between emerging empires. Assyria, Babylon, Egypt, and the Hittites all vied for regional dominance. Smaller kingdoms like Israel navigated these dangerous waters through alliances, treaties, and careful diplomacy. In this volatile context, Psalm 2 offered a theological framework for understanding Israel's place in the regional power structure. Despite being a relatively small kingdom, Israel's rulers could claim divine legitimacy that transcended mere military might. The psalm provided reassurance that even powerful empires were ultimately subject to divine oversight. Archaeological discoveries from this period confirm these regional tensions. The Tel Dan stele, discovered in 1993, mentions the House of David and describes Aramean military victories against Israel. The Mesha stele similarly boasts of Moabite rebellion against Israelite rule. These material artifacts provide tangible evidence of the very conflicts Psalm 2 addresses. Numismatic evidence adds another fascinating dimension. Coins from the Persian period, 539 to 332 BCE, often depicted rulers with divine symbols, indicating their claimed connection to deity. Later Hasmonean coins from the 2nd century BCE featured similar royal and religious motifs. These physical artifacts demonstrate how ancient rulers employed divine legitimation in exactly the manner Psalm 2 describes. The interpretive history of this psalm is equally fascinating. While originally composed for Israel's royal context, it underwent significant reinterpretation after the Babylonian exile. When Israel lost its political independence in 586 BCE, Psalm 2's royal imagery was increasingly understood in future messianic terms. By the time of the Dead Sea Scrolls community, 2nd century BCE to 1st century CE, Psalm 2 was being read as a prediction of a coming messianic deliverer. This eschatological reading intensified during periods of foreign occupation, particularly under Seleucid and Roman rule. The New Testament writers inherited this interpretive tradition. Hebrews 1 verse 5 and 5:5 quote Psalm 2 verse 7 as evidence of Christ's superior status. Acts 4 verses 25 to 28 interprets the raging nations as the coalition that opposed Jesus. Revelation 2:27, 12:5, and 19:15 all apply the rod of iron imagery to Christ's ultimate authority. This Christian appropriation of Psalm 2 fundamentally shaped Western political thought. Throughout the medieval period, European monarchs claimed divine right partly based on this psalm's theology. Charlemagne's coronation as Holy Roman Emperor in 800 CE explicitly drew on this tradition of divinely appointed kingship. The Reformation brought new interpretations. Calvin's commentary on Psalm 2 influenced Reformed political theology, particularly regarding resistance to tyranny. Luther's writings similarly engaged with this text when addressing proper relationships between church and state authorities. Even in secular modern contexts, echoes of Psalm 2's wisdom persist in political discourse. The concept of checks and balances in democratic systems acknowledges the dangers of unchecked power that the psalm warns against. International bodies like the United Nations represent attempts to create accountability frameworks for national sovereignty, addressing the very tensions this ancient poem describes. Contemporary scholars continue to find relevance in this text. Political theorists note how Psalm 2 addresses perennial questions about authority, legitimacy, and resistance. Psychologists recognize its insights into power dynamics and human tendencies toward autonomy. As we conclude our exploration of this remarkable ancient text, I want to return to its central paradox. Psalm 2 simultaneously validates proper authority while warning against its misuse. It affirms rightful governance while critiquing autonomy that acknowledges no higher moral standard. This balanced perspective offers wisdom for our polarized times. Neither absolute authority nor complete autonomy provides a sustainable path forward. The psalm suggests that human flourishing depends on recognizing proper order, authority that remains accountable to transcendent principles. Jerusalem's complex history illustrates this tension. From David's conquest around 1000 BCE to Roman destruction in 70 CE, from Islamic conquest in 637 CE to modern geopolitical disputes, this city has witnessed countless powers rise and fall. Yet through these tumultuous centuries, the wisdom of texts like Psalm 2 has continuously offered perspective that transcends immediate political circumstances. Archaeological discoveries in Jerusalem's City of David, including the stepped stone structure dating to the 10th century BCE, provide tangible connections to the world that produced this psalm. Standing amid these ancient stones, one can almost hear the echo of the psalmist's words across 3 millennia. The final invitation of Psalm 2, to find blessing through proper relationship with divine authority, continues to resonate across cultural and religious boundaries. Whether understood in explicitly theological terms or as a metaphor for alignment with moral principles, this ancient wisdom offers a path toward human flourishing that avoids both tyranny and chaos. Our exploration of this text reminds us that wisdom often comes from unexpected sources. An ancient Hebrew poem from a small Near Eastern kingdom has shaped civilizations, influenced political systems, and offered psychological insight for thousands of years. Its enduring relevance testifies to the universal human experiences it addresses. As we face our own contemporary challenges of governance, authority, and resistance, Psalm 2 continues to ask its provocative opening question: why do the nations rage? Perhaps the better question is whether we have the wisdom to hear its answer. That lasting security comes not through autonomous power, but through alignment with principles that transcend our momentary political circumstances. When we understand our place within a larger moral framework, we find not limitation but liberation. This ancient wisdom reminds us that true freedom comes not from breaking all bonds, but from being bound to what is truly good. Thank you for joining me on this exploration of one of history's most influential and provocative texts. Until next time, may you find wisdom in unexpected places and blessing in right relationship. Before you go, I want to personally invite you to be part of our growing community here at Prayer Universe. If this video touched your heart or brought you peace, take a moment to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a prayer or message that can uplift your spirit. But most importantly, I'd love to hear from you. In the comments below, share just one word or phrase of motivation that this video inspired in you, whether it's hope, gratitude, peace, or something else. Your words matter deeply to us because they help guide the content we create for this channel. Together, let's build a space filled with faith, encouragement, and connection. Thank you for being here, and remember, Every prayer counts. See you in the next one.